Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. George, please call the roll.
Hamilton.
Here.
Rasmussen.
Here.
Boyer.
Yes.
Silvers.
Yes.
Hamas.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any additions or changes to this evening's agenda? Michael, you had a committee report that you wanted to...
So just a quiet zone update.
Okay, so quiet zone update we'll put under our committee and board reports. Then we'll move to our consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from the June 25th meeting, approval of a liquor license for Casey's General Store 1714. We have an employment resolution for a maintenance worker with Park and Recreation. Is that the right one here? That's what it is. Okay, yes it is. Rose Pugh at $10 an hour. And also approval of claims in the amount of $475,293.07. Are there any questions regarding those?
I have a correction to the minutes.
Okay.
On page 3, my motion was to eliminate the $10 per month fee and the installation fee. It was all fees.
Okay. And so we'll amend that. So motion to approve with the amendment to the minutes.
So
Moved by Revelinsky.
Second.
Second by Boyer. Any other discussion? Now please call the roll.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Boyer.
Yes.
Hamas.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Silvers.
Yes, except I abstain at the minutes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, Council, we have our third and final reading for the utility connections ordinance. This is a public hearing. I'll ask first if there's any comment on this ordinance. Not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing, ask if the council has received any comments. If not, we'll move forward.
I
To
haven't
approve,
received any comments. We had a discussion about it at the recent utility committee meeting. I was
wasn't able to
hoping you
attend. I'm
were
sorry.
able to at least give me a note or something. of
I'm
what you
sorry,
thought.
Darren. Yeah,
But
I wasn't able to attend.
barring any of that, I would move that we move this from the third through the final reading.
Okay, and again, the essence of this states that for existing utility connections, water and sewer made to properties located within the city limits require said connections remain in place unless just cause for disconnection be shown to the utility provider for disconnection from service.
I have one question. Kevin, you were going to talk to John about the just cause clause in that. Did that occur or not?
No, he was out of town last week, and we didn't get a chance. We briefly discussed it on the phone, and I was hoping he would be here tonight, but he's not. So, but it's going to be a tough one when it comes to what is just cause to do that, because there's state code that's a concern there. Very few of the lots I think in town are going to be able to meet the burden to actually put in a well system. Certainly not a septic system. So, I mean, just cause is, I think, going to be a relative thing to the other concerns, which are going to be state code really not allowing it, and the city's interest in having its citizens, in mass shoulder the burden of the city services. I think that's another thing. That just cause is going to be a pretty tough one. Getting by the other two, I don't know, is going to be possible.
Darren, can you speak to the discussion that your committee had about that language? Was that a concern?
Just to the fact that when this ordinance was initially written, it was done by John Morrissey. So, and again, it was written at the time the Sustainable Living Center was constructed at MUM, and They were asking for waivers to particular ordinances where we require connection to sewer in particular, and that they were wanting rainwater purification for the drinking water system out there. And the waivers were granted on the stipulation that they were an educational institution, and that this building's primary function was to educate students on how a sustainable building, a living building would be. And for whatever reason, and I'm not sure, but this particular part of an ordinance was not ever enacted. So that's why I was bringing it back up through again. We were involved with the opt-out fee, and some of these other things started coming back that, hey, did we do this or not do this at that particular time? So that's where this came back to life.
Yeah, I think just cause, in my experience, is pretty general legal language that states that if you can prove your case that there's a reason why you should, then you can. So I think the language is probably fine in that respect.
Just a comment. My original objection last week was I thought it was too vague. There was no definition there, and also it wasn't so much to me. It wasn't only the cause, but it was somehow that perhaps we should state in our ordinance that fine, if you have a good reason that we agree with, then you also have to do this. But I guess we don't need to have that in the code. And so in thinking about it, I'm not sure this is ever going to really be exercised. However, there is, for instance, Abundance Eco Village, which is self-sufficient with water. They don't get any water service. They don't have a well. They actually save the water from their rooftops in a cistern, underground cistern, and God willing, they won't have to add to it this summer because it must be going down for them. But it just occurs to me if let's say the city expands all around them someday, and they actually are compelled to enter the city, just for instance. I suppose we could say just cause is that you've been doing fine, without it ever since, you started back in the 80s or 90s. And so, anyway, so I guess I'm saying I'm withdrawing my objection to the just cause, and I'll be all right with this.
That's fine. I hear your and understand your argument. If that ever does happen, services will have to be brought out there, and at a minimum, they would have to connect to sanitary sewer systems. They would not be allowed to have septic systems any longer in the Abundance Village out there.
Well, I'm sure they're planning on that never happening, but
well, I understand, and that is one direction that the city could potentially grow if we do grow.
Sure.
But there's a whole other side to what would happen if that's the case, and some things would have precedence over others. But I think first and foremost, if the city runs services out that far, we have a vested interest in the use of those facilities. So
I have a feeling none of us sitting up here, if and when that ever happens, I have a feeling none of us, with the possible exception of Michael, will be still with the council. So it'll be up to some other people to decide that one at the time.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm all right with this language.
Do have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Boyer. Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Hammes,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Halleck,
Yes.
Thank you.
Silvers.
Yes.
Get ready
One
to
more.
sneeze. Revelinsky.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, council, we have had our bid opening for the Second Street reconstruction project. Melanie, if you could tell us what the results were and let us know how many bids we received, what they were, and what you recommend.
We opened bids on the Second Street reconstruction last week. There were 2 bids received, one from Shipley Construction out of Burlington and the other from Wesley Barton out of Mount Pleasant. Shipley was the low bid at $163,817.
And could you also read the amount of the other, and the name of the other bidder?
The other was Wesley Barton Construction from Mount Pleasant with a bid of $184,030.60.
And the engineer's estimate was 143,000, so those both came in over. Anything that you saw in their bids that seemed high or out of line?
The high item was the fly ash subbase. We considered using fly ash instead of a modified or a rock subbase, hoping to use a lot of the rock that the sewer contractor had already put down. It ended up being that all of the amount that we were over the engineer's estimate came in the fly ash portion. Everything else was reasonable. So we're talking with the contractor now on ways to cut that cost. Maybe going back to a modified or a rock subbase will be the cheaper option. On 227th, we received excellent bids on fly ash. And this number was nearly twice what we saw on 227th. So we're talking to them about that right now.
Okay.
And again, fly ash is a byproduct of burning coal.
It's
from a coal-fired generator electric plant.
Yep. It's a cementitious, can I say that?
Yeah.
Material.
And it was twice as high as Barton's bid.
Yeah, that's what's interesting there. Under the Shipley bid, that they are charging $35,000 for the fly ash versus the Barton bid is only $17,000.
Mm-hmm.
But they made it up in other ways. So yeah, good. Maybe you can work with them.
Barton's fly ash estimate or bid price is more like what we saw on 227th. So I've called the contractor a couple times. We've played phone tag, so I haven't gotten a good explanation as to why they were so high, whether it was a subcontractor's number or I don't have a feel for that right now.
Mm-hmm.
But you are recommending we accept the low bid from Shipley?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Hamilton,
Second.
second by Rasmussen.
Just a question on that. Means we're promising to pay the $35,000 for the fly ash if we pass this, right?
If you pass this, if we did not do the fly ash, it'd be done by a change order, which would be through council action anyway. So that would override the $35,000 for the fly ash. The change order would be agreed on by you and the contractor.
So you're optimistic that you can negotiate?
I'm optimistic, but I'm not promising anything.
Right. I
So
understand.
it wouldn't be more effective for the negotiation to say they approve the bid except for the fly ash amount?
Kevin, can you speak to this?
Well, I mean, in our discussions too, when we're talking about using the stone instead, I mean, there's a pretty ample amount of discussion that happens on the construction level as to which is really the better product to use when it comes to road basing. There's a element of kind of bridging when you look at fly ash when it comes to weaknesses in the subbase of a street. Mel and I have been discussing this, I think, at length over probably the last week or so. I mean, I have an opinion about that, but I think I tend to appreciate rock subbase a little better, aggregate subbase, just because I think on a longevity level, it's probably, in my opinion only, I think it might be a little bit more of a substantive base for a road, especially when you have heaving, thawing, and all this. That is up to debate, and I am certainly not an engineer, but I think there's room to negotiate here on both those kinds of issues, not only the price of the flash, but maybe the alternate decision for the subbase material. So I mean, I think there's wiggle room. We could certainly, I mean, what's it gonna do to us if we wait? I don't think it's gonna be a tremendous deal if we do. We could wait and.
Shipley's working on another street in town, so they'll be finishing that D Street up before they move to this street anyway. So if you held this for 2 weeks, it wouldn't delay the construction process on 2nd Street.
I don't think it would hurt. I don't think it would hurt to do that, and we could continue talking with it. We were going to do that anyway, obviously, and I think there would have been a change regardless, but not a bad concept.
Well, I would withdraw my motion to accept the low bid and make a motion to table this for till the next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Hamilton, second by Revelinsky to table the action on the awarding of the 2nd Street reconstruction project. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Okay, thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Okay. Council, then we'll move down to our committee reports. We had a report by our city attorney, but I don't see him here this evening, updating our revitalization plan. I don't think we had any action on that, did we, or is it just a report?
No, Your Honor, we did not, but I will talk to him tomorrow, and we'll have that updated at our next meeting. We do want to sort of expedite that, I think, going forward over the next month or so.
Right. Okay, thank you. Moving to our committee and board reports, Water, Sewer, and Utilities Committee report.
Yes, thank you. We met on July 2nd here at City Hall. We were discussing different options that the city is going to look at and create a conceptual estimate of what it would cost to do each option. We talked about the census meter, and that's a single read meter. It actually is a radio read meter that broadcasts only when it's awakened by the receiving handheld device. It does operate at a scale of about 20 times the frequency of what the Neptune meters that we currently use do. For computer software to patch that type of system and 2 handheld units, we're looking at an initial startup cost of approximately $11,000. That was discussed at the meeting. The census meter actually costs about $20 less than what the Neptune meter does, but there was some concerns by those in attendance at the meeting that since it did broadcast at about 20 times or 2 watts more than what the Neptune meter does, whether the city would guarantee that it would only be read once or have it broadcast just once in a month's time, and there was nothing resolved on that as far as the discussion was concerned. The other option we talked about just briefly was Sioux City has a telephone wired system. I don't believe we've had any more discussions with them to this point. And then we also discussed the Lisco company and the possibility of using their company, Mediacom or Windstream, any broadband provider for accessing meters in homes. And there's been a subsequent meeting to that just the other day out at Lisco. We had some preliminary discussions as far as what the conceptual idea is of how that would work, and some very basic costs were batted around. And I'll have a more detailed report of that when I'm able to get the estimate completely finalized out. Again, we have approximately 1,115 radio read meters that are installed in homes here in the city. I did a little more research today. At the time of that meeting, we had a total of 36 people that were on a list. 29 of those had actual radio read meters in their homes. 7 of them did not. Of those 36 people, only 9 of them have come in to fill out a form. The city's developed a form that you need to fill out in order to have a radio read meter opt-out done from your residence. And that form is designed for either someone that does not want one to come in or someone that has one in their home that needs to be removed. If you do not have one in your home right now, then it will stay on file till the time comes when the existing meter that's in your house needs to be replaced. As of today, that number has went from 9 to 18 that have filled out paperwork for removal of meters, and 4 of those have been completed. So we're moving along with it, moving ahead, and we'll have a more detailed report in days to come. I'd like to be able to get a letter into the editor explaining more about the paperwork involved with someone coming in and filling out this form so that they can actually have something done with the meter. So that's my report, Mayor.
Okay, thanks, Darren. So you will continue to meet on alternatives and do a financial analysis
Yes.
of each one and beyond,
Yes.
and then we'll continue to review
Yeah,
those.
and the committee will meet again after I've got some more of these numbers put together. So, and thank you, Susan, for writing up the short report that we had here in front of us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Ways and Means.
Yes. I also had a report that I submitted, didn't make its way to the desk or the minutes here, but I pulled it up here and I'll read from some of it a little bit. We had a very good discussion last week with some of the members of the Pool and Recreation Center Committee about what realistic amounts that the city might be expected to contribute towards that project. And there have been, I felt our discussion was well reported in the paper, so you're probably all aware pretty much of what happened there. But we looked at our lost account, reviewed, what is currently allocated, and it was felt it would be very complicated, maybe a little difficult to convince the voters to change that allocation right now of what we presently have set up with that loss. That's the way we felt. And of course, this is a lively input with, that we're all stakeholders in, and we love to get input from everyone, but that's what our committee felt. There was also some discussion about possibility of selling Logan Apartments and using the proceeds of that for this pool and recreation center complex. But we have to consider also the fact that Logan generates $50,000 to $70,000 a year that goes in our general fund, which would be missed if we didn't have that asset. And it may not always contribute that much, because we may have some serious repairs in the future. So, but at this point, the committee didn't really feel to move ahead on the.
And John, that number is closer to 30 to 50, and it's closer to 30.
Is it?
These years, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, just.
Thanks for the correction.
Not to
I
interrupt,
seem to
yeah.
remember 70, and the last time I kind
I think it used to
piqued
be.
my interest, but maybe that was a few years back.
Yeah, I think it was a few years back.
Yeah, I'm showing my age here in the council. In the good old days, we used to get 70. We did look at, the reality of bonding for ourselves, and we have some ability to continue to borrow money as a city. We want to reserve some of that ability for other capital expenses that we're anticipating, especially with our sewer. But if we did take $2 million, we looked at what it would mean as far as payout back over a 20-year period per year, and we delayed our actual recommendation because we wanted to consider, well, okay, what if it was $2.5 million? What if it was $3 million that we borrow? What would that mean for our, property tax rate each year if we had a 10-year or 20-year payback period on it? So we are going to meet again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. here at the City Hall, and everyone's invited to join on that discussion, but we'll report on that. I'm sure you'll read about it in the paper before I report again.
Okay. John, let me just offer a little bit of background also. The Recreation Task Force Committee, what they are actually reviewing at this point in time are two things. One is what facilities we would be developing and what they would cost, and those are still unknowns. As was reported also, the last time that they met, there was a discussion about splitting the facilities and having the replacement of the pool at Obie Nelson remain at Obie Nelson, and then the proposed recreation facility or gymnasium would be placed on land that we currently own at the rec center, so that it would be connected. Hopefully there would be some efficiencies there by building the facility there, and that recommendation I think was accepted. I don't know whether it was actually formally voted, but that is the direction that they're going right now. So in that then also what we will be doing is separating the projects from our current consultant. Our current consultant would go on with the pool, and then they would start anew with the recreation center and begin looking at that. Now, both projects are going to still total something that's going to be a fairly high number. We don't, I don't want to quote because we just don't know at this point. We hope that there's going to be some economic efficiencies by going this other direction with the recreation center. But what they're asking us is to review what our total bonding capacity could potentially be, so that we, if it does go to the public for an election and a vote, that, which would be for both projects, that we would have that in order. Now, the one question that I have, because I was talking with our consultant today about our bonding capacity, and new revenue, or rather new money that taxpayers are paying, whether it's on a utility bill or on property taxes, is still a new burden on the homeowner, on the property owner, on the ratepayer. But the revenue bonds that we would likely use for the wastewater treatment plant be counted against our overall indebtedness?
No.
They're not.
No, that would be
So
just our
that's-
general obligation
Right,
debt, Your Honor.
right, okay. So there is still capacity within your ability to borrow, but it's just, I think we're really more talking about the overall burden of both projects simultaneously over a 10-year period of time. Okay. So tomorrow's meeting will be a continuation of the discussion, and
Correct.
and you think a recommendation would come out about
That's
a
our
particular
plan,
amount?
yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, then next we'll move on to an update on the quiet zone. Michael, I understand you have some good news.
Yeah, so as Jerry Long reported, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, there was a little hiccup in getting these permits that the construction company requires to work near the tracks. Somebody forgot to file the form, and generally it's a 2-month process. Once we found the error and filed them, we were able to get the permits in about 3 weeks. So Drish Construction has all the permits they need. Early next week, they'll meet with French Rent-A-Cur and have a pre-construction meeting where they'll lay out what crossings they'll do and what order and all that stuff, and then get started on construction. So hopefully 7 weeks for construction, maybe late August, early September. And in the meantime, I'll line up the final paperwork with the FRA, which is a notice of establishment. You file that when you're done with construction. There's a 21-day comment period where anyone, say the railroad company or the DOT, anybody who might have an issue with anything can make a comment. We're not expecting them to, since they were all there when we laid out our plan. Actually, we amended our quiet zone to please the railroad company. They wanted extra stuff at 9th Street, so we added stuff for them. So I'm not expecting any issues, but so the earliest would be late September, but I'm going to just say we'll have it this fall, because I've been bitten before by over-promising and under-delivering. So I'm going to switch that around and say it'll eventually be a reality that construction should begin before our next council meeting.
Great, thanks, Michael. Okay. Next, council, will move to our city administrator report. You have an update, Kevin?
Yes, I was going to say, Your Honor, that I'll be toward what we were talking about, what you were talking about earlier with the different efforts that we're going to be undertaking on a capital level with sewer improvements. I'll be meeting shortly with McClure. I had a long conversation with him last Friday evening, and Terry Lutz from McClure Engineering will be coming into town hopefully on Thursday, and we'll be having a long discussion kind of about, kind of where we're headed. What I'm hearing from him is that even though you haven't seen that many larger rainfall events, that really all they were going to need to get some accurate rainfall data would probably have been about 2 to 3, 1 inch being significant rainfall events. And he believes that he has that information. Of course, I've questioned him on that kind of ardently, because I want to make sure that we have that wet weather information. We have, of course, plenty of dry weather information, but it's important to get both, particularly to get the wet weather, because we're looking at those impacts as being quite significant in our decision making here. So He'll be in town, and we'll be talking to him. Shortly thereafter, I'll be having a meeting with he and our city engineer, and we will sort of circle wagons and look at what are really a multitude of decisions that we can make on how we want to approach this, how we're going to approach this. Combination of not just actions, but policies. I think over going forward over the next 10 to 20 years, it looks like. So hopefully we're going to try to expedite that process, get where we need to be to give the best staff product we can to council, so we can make good and timely decisions here before we actually commit to the things that we know, of course, that we're going to have to do. So far so good. The meeting with the DNR went well, of course, and I think this the system here that we're going to put together with McClure and with our city engineer and myself and a couple of others, I think, sitting in on those meetings in the end, I think we're going to be able to bring a quality product forward and good recommendations, and we're going to actually get into the thick of solving what are our problems with these SSOs and these overflows, and solve our problems on a very important front. So that's one thing coming up this week that's pretty serious, along with our Ways and Means, and I would agree, I would concur that that was a very good meeting with a lot of good input in that meeting. I think probably at some point when we do bring this back to the council floor, there may be some good conversations in that meeting too, maybe some substantive disagreements on some of that, but I think that's healthy, particularly when we're looking at this. And I would remark that on an overall debt capacity level, that while the city has about $11 million in available debt capacity, literally, you want to 15 to 20% of that, as we've all discussed, I think at some time or another, is a good idea to keep back for emergency use, disaster events or other emergencies for the city. So in operational debt capacity for use, and this is an important point, that it's $8 million for the city. Now, in the city's capacity to actually abate debt, I think is what Your Honor was indicating is the big conversation here. So I hope that when we get into the thick of this, that we can, it'll be a sober look at what our realities are while we're in a very solid financial position. We do want to remain so, and I think that that's been our key in those conversations. So I think those have been really productive. But other than that, I guess that's would be my update. I don't know if any department heads are here who would like to offer anything by way of update, but they're not. So that would conclude my.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Council, we have one more item of business, and that would be to go into closed session to discuss purchase or sale of real estate, and that would be by Section 21.5J of the Iowa Municipal Code. So I'd entertain a motion now to go into closed session.
So moved.
Moved by Hamilton.
Second.
Second by Boyer. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Now we'll clear the council chambers and close our doors. Thank you all.